Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tony McDowell. I'm the Finance Director for the City of Asheville, and I would like to welcome you all to the August 24th Audit Committee meeting. The Audit Committee, I'll just tell you a little bit about the committee. They only meet quarterly, so just in case you all are new to this committee or tuning in for the first time, the Audit Committee was established with responsibilities to review internal audit reports produced by the city, review along with management and our external auditors the results of our financial statements, report to City Council about committee activities, issues, and related recommendations, and provide an open avenue of communication between internal audit, the external auditors, and City Council. All committee members and staff today are participating virtually, and we appreciate everyone's patience as we work through this virtual format, which we've had in place for a while now. So hopefully we've worked out all the bugs. We're streaming live today on our Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city website and also linked on this committee's webpage. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone. So for those of you out there today with us, we welcome you. So what I'll do next is I'll do a roll call and I'll go through and introduce all the committee members who are participating virtually. I would remind folks who are here in the meeting to please mute your microphone if you're not speaking. And then when you have a question or would like to speak, unmute your microphone. And then please remember to remute your microphone or your phone after you're done speaking. So I will introduce the committee members. As I say your name, please say a quick hello. First up is the committee secretary, Andrew Emery.
Hello.
Next up is City Council Liaison Council Member Sage Turner.
Hello.
Committee Member Debbie Evanchek.
Hello.
And we have two new committee members with us today. This is their first meeting. The first I'll introduce is Nate Hathaway. And Nate, since you're new, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. I'm relatively new to Asheville. Been here about a little over a year and a half. Moved here from Dallas, Texas, so escaped the heat a little bit, although maybe not so much this week. But basically, I'm in an accounting position here at Home Trust Bank in downtown Asheville.
Thank you. Well, welcome. And then our final committee member, and I'm not sure if she has logged on yet. She's also new, and I'm hoping I pronounced her last name correctly, Sandra Frimpong. Sandra, have you joined us yet? All right. I don't think I see Sandra on the call. So we'll continue on, and if Sandra does join us, we will speak with her and introduce her later on. Okay, so I will start the committee agenda items today. To help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. Additionally, I'll ask the committee members raise their hand to speak, and I will call upon them. The first item on the agenda today is approval of the minutes from the last meeting of the committee. Are there any questions or changes to the minutes? Okay, seeing none, we'll vote on this item. Committee members, when I say your name, please say aye or nay. Committee member Emery.
Aye.
Committee member Turner.
Aye.
Committee member Evanchek.
Aye.
And committee member Hathaway.
Aye.
It passes 4-0. Thank you all. Okay, so moving to the next item on the agenda, and it's a little different today because usually the chair of this committee or the chair of each committee does the introduction and handles all the things I've done up until now. But this committee's chair is vacant at the moment. The longtime audit committee chair, Scott Powell, who works at the Metropolitan Sewerage District, decided to step aside. He's been with the committee for quite a while. So the group needs to select a new committee chair. And so with that, to conduct that, if it's okay if I turn this over to Councilmember Turner to conduct the discussion and then the selection of the new Audit Committee chair.
Sure, thank you. It's a wonderful position. I hope that all of you are excited to jump at this opportunity. However, is anyone interested? And if not, I'm happy to nominate someone. Would anyone like to speak up and volunteer?
Yes, I am willing to do it.
All right, new and ready. We like that. All right, well, I think we need proper motions and seconds, and then we'll do a roll call vote. So I'll make a motion that Nate become the chair of the Audit Committee.
I second that motion.
Okay, I'm going to do a roll call vote. Oh, it looks like we have Sandra. Sandra, hi, welcome. We were just getting started.
Hi, sorry, I called in, trying to join. So sorry about that.
Welcome and thank you for joining us. We were just getting started and nominating a new chair of the committee because we don't have a current chair. So we haven't really gotten into the agenda yet, so you're just in time. But we just had a motion for Nate to become the chair in a second. So now I'm going to do what we have to do every time we're virtual. We have to do a roll call vote. So I'm going to call you out as I see you on the screen. Andrew?
Aye.
Debbie? Aye. Sandra?
Aye.
Great. Nate?
Aye.
And myself, aye. And we have a new chair. Thank you, Nate. Yay. All right, I'm going to hand it back to you, Tony.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Sage. Congratulations, Nate. Hope you serve long and prosper in this role. So the next item on the agenda is the fiscal year 2023 year-end audit update. And I think, well, I know we have some slides to share, and I think Alicia's going to pull those up, and I'll give her just a moment to get those pulled up on the screen for everyone to see. Okay, so this item today is going to be myself and our Assistant Finance Director, Becky Ogold, who are going to walk you all through some slides to talk about our year-end audit. And because this is really the only kind of major item on the agenda today, we do have some time, so we want to take our time with y'all, especially since some of y'all are new to the committee as well. We want to take our time, let y'all answer or ask questions of us, because again, I think for some of y'all, this is kind of the first time that you've heard any presentation about the year-end audit and the comprehensive financial report that we do here at the city every year. So we'll probably stop after each slide, let y'all ask questions. I think I'm going to do the first slide. I think Becky's going to kind of take over from there. And then I'll probably jump in after Becky walks through each slide. But again, make sure we give y'all plenty of time to ask questions as well. So Alicia, you can go to the next slide. So again, with some of y'all being new to committees here at the City of Asheville, you'll see us in presentations quite often have these key takeaway slides. And we do that in order to kind of make sure at the beginning of each presentation, we hit the high points. So if you remember nothing else from here on out, here are the main takeaways that we want y'all to get from today. And for this one, the first bullet there is the year-end audit process is underway and will continue through the end of October. So I think most of y'all know, and Becky's going to kind of go through a more detailed calendar on the next slide, but our fiscal year here at the city, like all local governments and the state government here in North Carolina, runs from July 1 to June 30th. So our fiscal year, for what we call fiscal year 22-23, wrapped up on June 30th of this year. And we have started the audit process. So another requirement here in North Carolina is that all local governments hire an external firm to come in and look at our financial statements, to look at our internal controls, and that's required that be done on an annual basis. So that process is underway. State statute also puts in place a timeline for that. It requires local governments to submit audits to the state by November 1st of each year. It does have a built-in automatic 30-day extension, so technically we have until the 1st of December to get the audit sent into the state, but our goal here at the city is to meet that November 1 deadline, and we've met that for several years now. So the second bullet on this slide is Much like with the budget process, there are key milestones and statutorily required deadlines that must be met, and success requires the assistance of all city departments. And so to kind of talk a little bit about what we're trying to get at here, Councilmember Turner knows obviously from being on council that the budget process is a very public-facing process. We spend about 6 months or so talking to City Council about the budget. The community provides us with input, and so it gets a lot of attention, and it's a very important financial process for the city. But equally important is the process that we're working on right now, and that's the year-end financial report and the audit. And it's important for a lot of reasons. One is that in some ways, the document, the financial report that we end up completing as a part of this process is, like I said, in many ways more important even than the budget document that gets produced, because it is the document that our debt rating agencies look at to determine the financial health of the city. The local government commission looks at it when we're issuing debt. Our investors, banks, as we're looking to do investments with banks and issue debt and everything. And so it really is a very important process, an important document that results from that process. And then the second thing we try to emphasize with this bullet is that it's not just a finance department project. Even though Becky's team is the lead and a lot of the work happens in finance, and it can't be a success with just us, because we really rely on the departments to get us a lot of the information that the auditors are asking us to provide, particularly around grants. And Becky's going to talk a little bit more about some of the grants that the auditors are looking at this year. But a lot of the documentation, a lot of the information that the auditors ask us for, we have to turn around and ask departments for. And so we really stress to our departments during this time of year to make those requests a priority, get them turned around to us as quickly as we can, or as quickly as they can, to make sure that we stay on target to meet that October deadline. And then finally, that third bullet, again, I kind of touched on this already, is that completion of the year-end audit and submittal to the North Carolina Local Government Commission, and that's the group in North Carolina who reviews these reports and reviews really all financial information related to local governments, cities and counties in North Carolina. It's critical that we get that report done, that we get it done on time, and that we have as few or no findings as possible, because all that information feeds into our ability to issue debt. It impacts our credit rating agencies with places like Moody's and Standard & Poor's, et cetera, et cetera. So I think with that, Alicia, you can go to the next slide, and I will turn it over to Becky from here on out.
Thanks, Tony. And good afternoon, everyone. Like Tony said, I'm Becky Ogles. I'm the Assistant Finance Director, and I kind of manage our year-end process. So just to go through some kind of key dates with you guys. So as Tony mentioned, our year ends June 30th. We do not close our books in the software until August 11th. We do that to try and get as many transactions that should have been recorded in the previous fiscal year in before we do close. Of course, even after that August 11th, my team is still reviewing balance sheet accounts, just accounts in general, and we do make other adjustments after that point in a period 13 period in the system. But we try our best that when we hard close the system, we have as much information, especially on the AP side of things, in there, so it's fewer accruals and everything along those lines. We have been in the midst of our interim and single audit, which is our grant testing. This includes revenues, receivables. We do walkthroughs of processes with the auditors. So that has really been taking place, honestly, probably since the beginning of July. It really kind of ramped up with the auditors last week and this week, actually. Had multiple requests from them. We did have our first kind of weekly check-in with our auditors just, I guess that was Tuesday. And these are just kind of status meetings just to make sure that what I say is outstanding is what they're saying is outstanding, and we can just kind of have an open dialogue on how things are going and kind of where we are in the process. They are requesting a trial balance, so a final trial balance for us on September 22nd. We are on track to get it to them by that date. And then we will do complete kind of final field work the last week of September, beginning week of October. The month of October is really us drafting financial statements and them drafting financial statements. We kind of tag team it, and then reviewing everything to compile the ACFR, or the annual comprehensive financial report that is submitted. And then, as Tony mentioned, it is our goal and our hope always to get it to the LGC by October 31st. Right now, we actually, like I said, we just had a status meeting with them, and we are still on track for that. September and October, though, are big months, so we are hoping to remain kind of on track to get it done by that date. Tony, did you have anything to add or any questions from anybody?
Yeah, I just add, and again, if y'all have any questions, happy to answer them. So, and for those of you who were on the committee back in March when we had our last meeting, we shared with y'all at that point that we do have new auditors this year. It's a firm called Cherry Beckert. They do a lot of audit work here in North Carolina with local governments. And we have a policy here at the city that after every 5 years, we switch out audit firms. And so we went through a competitive bid process. Cherry Beckert was the team that emerged. They were actually our auditors previous to the group that we just finished off with. So what, 5, 6 years ago, Cherry Beckert were our auditors. We then switched to a group called PB Mayers, and now we're back with Cherry Beckert again. And so that is impacting the work level a little bit for us because, again, them being new, they're asking for some things that PB Mayers had not been asking for, and asking for things a little differently. But so far, like Becky said, that is going really well. And I think, don't want to speak for Becky, but I think we're really enjoying working with the team there at Cherry Beckert so far. So Nate, I see you have a question.
Yes, on the last line there, for the due date of October 31st, I've been trying to familiarize myself with everything and going back and like watching some of the videos of prior meetings. And Tony, you made a comment that in one of those videos that basically the financial statements have usually been finalized. I thought you said in like December, January timeframe. Is that when you would have done is there a gap between when the financial statements are done and when they're presented somewhere else, or did I mishear that?
So we, like Becky said, we wrap up things usually by the end of October. Sometimes it stretches into the first few days of November. I think last year we officially submitted to the LGC.
November 7th.
November 7th. Thank you, Becky. So that's always our goal.
Okay.
The LGC gives an automatic 30-day extension, so without any penalty. So if it stretches to the 1st of December, that's okay by LGC standards as well. But we don't want to do that. We want to get it done by the end of October. And sometimes, like last year, for example, we really needed to get it done because we had to issue some debt in January for our capital projects program, and the LGC will not allow you to proceed with issuance of that debt until you have your audit done. So we had to really rush to get things done last year.
Okay.
And Nate, what you might be seeing also is I do think that we have, I want to say it's 60 days to present it to council. So if we go into, if we don't finish the report until sometimes maybe mid-November, it will sometimes, because of holidays and such, it sometimes will not get presented to council, sometimes until a December meeting. We try and do it in November, but sometimes it's not presented until a December meeting, just depending on timelines and everything along those lines. So I'm not sure if maybe that's what you saw in a presentation, because I do know that we have presented to council maybe the first meeting in December, because I think often the second meeting in November gets canceled because of Thanksgiving. So
sure. That's probably what I was thinking of.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, Becky. That's actually our plan this year, is we'll come back to you all in November with the results, and then we'll go to City Council at their first meeting in December. Okay. Debbie, I see you have a question.
Yeah, so I think you just answered it, but so am I understanding correctly that the Audit Committee does not have any review or visibility into the comprehensive financial report until after it's been issued to the local government commission?
That is correct. Yeah. Well, this is really y'all meet on a quarterly basis, and so there's the update today, which again hopefully will provide you all with a good understanding kind of where we're at right now. Like Becky said, there's still a lot of work to be done, obviously, between now and the end of October. But historically, no, the Audit Committee has not, other than updates like this and then presentation once it's submitted, there's not kind of an interim or another touch point with this committee.
If we wanted one, could there be?
So that is a great question. I think one that we would have to think about and discuss at the staff level and kind of look at the charter for the committee and see if that's something that we would want to look into. I would say I wouldn't recommend it for this year, kind of given the fact that we're already well into the process and we've got kind of deadlines and everything and all set. I think that's something if we wanted to look at expanding you all's involvement, I would recommend we do that with the fiscal year 23-24 audit, not the one we're already engaged in now. So great questions. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide, I guess.
Okay, this is just kind of a snapshot, and I have talked about some of this, or Tony has talked about some of this, of kind of just what work has happened to date. Like Tony mentioned, we have new auditors. They were chosen through an RFP process. I want to say we had 6 firms send in proposals that were reviewed internally, and actually Scott Powell, who of course was the chair of this committee, he was on that review process as well. Cherry Beckert was chosen. We actually did a kickoff meeting with them earlier than normal this year, but back in March. This just kind of laid out the expectations of what the next 6 months we're going to kind of look like. Set some tentative dates, just make sure that, we had times on the calendar that things would happen and things along those lines. The auditors, Cherry Beckert, have also reviewed the work papers from our previous auditors. I believe that happened sometime in April. I know we signed off for them to be able to communicate to each other, and they told me that was finished and finalized. The major thing that we have been working on is our single audit program. So this is the grant compliance testing that they are required to do. Some of you might remember from last year, I think we had 14 programs that we had to test last year. Most of that was because anything that had COVID relief dollars in them had to be looked at, and we had a lot. Luckily, this year, there's actually only 3 that we're doing this year. It is the American Rescue Plan, or our ARPA funds. That, Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we got a total of about 26 million, is that correct? And in fiscal year 23, we spent just shy of $6 million of those proceeds. So they will kind of dig into those transactions and make sure that we followed grant compliance the way we were supposed to. That is the only one actually on the federal side that they are required to test this year. On the state side, they have already started looking at the State Maintenance Assistance Program, or SMAP. This is funding for our transit department. It just helps with operations, funding the operations of our transit department. And that one, I think it's around $1.1 million that we received last year. And then they're also going to be looking at our Powell bill allocation. This is an allocation that we get on a yearly basis that goes to our streets. It funds the help paving and maintenance of our streets, sidewalks and everything along those lines. And that one was $2.7 million for fiscal year 23. Like I mentioned earlier, we've also been doing walkthroughs, just walking through our processes. We did purchasing, accounts payable, utility billing, general billing. They walked through our payroll process with us just to kind of get an idea of our internal controls, looked through our control narratives and everything along those lines. So that is kind of where we are, what has happened to date. So yeah, Nate?
Yeah, I'm just curious, as you mentioned, the number of, programs that had to be audited is way down. So is the audit fee at all dependent on the number of programs that actually have to be tested?
So it is, I do not believe it is, and I would have to reread the contract, but I think that they basically, there is a separate fee for single audit, just because some local governments don't have grants that meet that threshold, that they I think it's $750,000 worth of grants that you have to trigger a single audit, but I think their fee is basically based on just a single audit program as a whole. So no, I do not think the fee is based on the number of programs that they test. But I will say, last year, since we tested so many, I think they went over on their hours that they had allocated. And I do know that there's a little bit of an extra fee if we do go over on hours. So I don't think the single audit fee changes. I think it's more of hours as a whole.
Okay.
Any other questions before Tony? Anything you would like to add?
No, I'm good. We want to move on to the next slide.
Yep. So next steps. We have gotten them populations for revenues, receivables, payables, cash, debt, and capital assets. So they will be looking through those, picking samples that we will provide backup for, and that's kind of what the next couple of weeks will be. We are also just about completed with the implementation of GASB 96. This was an implementation of subscriptions, similar to GASB 87, the leases that we now have to show on our financial statements. We are completing reconciliations of balance sheet accounts just to make sure everything ticks and ties the way it should be, and we will, of course, get all of this done prior to getting a trial balance to the auditors on September 22nd. We do have certain reports that we draft in-house for the audit, so we will start working on those. And then, of course, the auditors draft some of the financial statements as well. So we draft, we review, do a lot of review to make sure everything is where it needs to be in the report. And then, of course, we will present, we normally do a joint Policy, Finance, and Human Resources and Audit Committee meeting. I think we'll do that in November, and then we will present to City Council in December. So that's kind of what the next, I guess that's like 4 months, looks like for us.
And I would just add to that, we'll also be doing the same update in a few weeks to the Policy, Finance, and HR Committee. I think their meeting date is September 12th. And then we will probably come back to them. They meet monthly. And so we will probably come back to them in October again with another update to them prior to finalizing things in November. And one of the things we will hope to do, and one of the, there's obviously a lot of important stuff that comes out of these year-end audits, but I think one of the ones that gets the most visibility, and that I know in terms of interest in City Council, is where do we end the year with our fund balance? And so we definitely have some work. Becky and her team have a fair amount of work to do over the next couple months to determine where we're going to land there. But we hope to be able to share that, perhaps a estimate of that in October with the Policy, Finance, and HR Committee. If not, then certainly we'll have that final number by the time we talk to you all again in November. So,
any questions on this slide? Yeah, Debbie.
I guess not a question on this slide, but I would be very interested in seeing the reports from the external auditors regarding any control weaknesses, whether they are material or not. When do we get an opportunity to view that, and then also to review the city's plan for addressing those?
So we normally get, so to be honest with you, I ask for updates on any control issues that might come up throughout testing, just so that we know as soon as possible, so that we can tell you guys, tell council, tell everybody. So during our weekly meetings, I always ask that question. They are not really formalized in a formal report till close to the end of it, in a letter that the auditors are required to do. So, I mean, Tony and I will always bring those up as we know about them. And we do ask that they let us know as soon as possible on those, so we're not kind of, sidelined at the end with something. But we can, a final report that you guys could see, though, would not come out probably close to the submission, which would be the end of October. And of course, we don't present the findings and everything to you. Those are actually presented by the auditors. So the auditors will come to that November meeting and present their findings to you guys per statute. And you would be able to ask questions, and you would get all the material before that meeting, of course.
Okay, that's good. And then in terms of the city addressing those concerns, any material weaknesses or non-material, how does that process work?
Yeah, so anything that is, and I would have to go back and look, but anything that is reported actually in the financial statements, we do have to kind of comment on how we will correct it. So that has to be completed, and it's actually part of the submission of the audit. So all of that would be finalized and would go to you guys before that November meeting.
So we would get some input about how we view the resolution to those items?
I guess what I would say to that is, I think, like Becky said, if there are any findings, material weaknesses, significant deficiencies, anything like that, the auditors will present that in November to you all. And then, like Becky said, we have to also respond to that and identify what our plan is to correct whatever weaknesses or material, whatever issues they may identify. What then would happen from there, I would say, is that as we go through the year with you all, with follow-up meetings, and one of the things I was going to talk about in our next agenda item is kind of what the schedule would look like for 2024, is we can certainly report back to you all throughout the year on what have we done to correct anything that might be cited in the final audit report. So I would say that, and then also I would encourage you all of our, I think for the last 10 years, Becky, our financial reports are available online, and those do contain the findings, if there are any, as well as the corrective action plan that the city has identified to address those findings. So all that's out online for the previous financial reports that we've done.
Thank you.
Okay, Alicia, if no more questions, sorry, Tony.
No, you go ahead.
If no more questions, we can go to the final slide. And I think this is just kind of those key takeaways again. And I won't read through them again, but any questions about anything that we've covered or not covered? This is the presentation that we've just always done. So I know a lot of new members on this team. So yeah, just any questions? Yeah, Nate.
Yeah, this is something that was mentioned, I think, in the March meeting when the results of the risk assessment were presented. But Tony, you made a comment that you guys got a giant list of basically observations that you guys were in the process of digesting and trying to figure out what you wanted to do about them, and that you would report on kind of where you guys stood with that, in the next meeting. Is that something you guys are in a position to provide an update on? Or I guess, what was the resolution there?
So that actually kind of leads into the next agenda item,
Okay.
which is discussion of upcoming meetings and
Sure.
agenda items. But so why don't we transition over to the I did put together notes on
That's fine.
but just kind of a slide to kind of talk through that item. But I guess do we need to, let me see if, as the MC here, I guess I need to say the next item on our agenda today is the upcoming meeting schedule. And so I kind of want to walk through again, kind of to Nate's question. Where do we go from here with the committee? We got some new members on the committee. We had to reschedule a meeting from earlier in the spring because Becky and I were both out. So kind of where are we headed from here? So, and it's just one slide to kind of talk about the schedule. So first of all, like Becky mentioned, the next meeting that you all will have will be this joint meeting with the Policy, Finance, and HR Committee to review the FY23 external audit results. And like Becky said, it'll be our auditors doing the presentation. So they'll present to you all, you'll have the report ahead of time, ask them any questions you might want to ask them. If, and we hope there's not, but if there are any findings, then Becky and I will have a response to that at that meeting. And then the only other thing I'd say, two other things about that meeting, it is typically the meetings for you all are on Thursday in the afternoons. This meeting will be on a Tuesday at 10 a.m. I think all the calendar invites have been sent out already. Hopefully you all have seen those. And because it is a joint meeting with the Policy, Finance, and HR Committee, the audit results will be all that's on the agenda that day. So there won't be any other topics covered. And partly we do that because it's a joint meeting between the two committees, and partly because the presentation of the audit, and Deborah and Becky can attest to this, tends to take almost the full time for the meeting. And what the auditors try to do is at the committee level is really go through things in an in-depth fashion with you all. And then when they turn around and do the presentation to City Council in December, it's done at a much higher level and usually is completed in 10 minutes or less. But the presentation for you all will be very in-depth and likely take most of the meeting time. So Debbie, questions?
Yeah, I had something on my calendar for September 21st. Is that no longer an accurate meeting?
Yes, that one should be. If we haven't deleted that one from you all's calendars, we should, because this is kind of taking the place of. This is really kind of a combination of what I would call the spring and fall, or spring and summer meetings, and like I said, the previous one got canceled or moved back because Becky and I were both out. So yes, the next meeting for this committee will be November 14th.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So from there, and again, this kind of goes to where Nate was talking about, is just want to have a quick discussion with you all about what the schedule looks like after November. And so this committee meets quarterly, and so what I would propose is that we do the months that I've laid out there. So you'd have a January meeting, an April meeting, and then an August meeting, just like this one, because I opted for August instead of July, because I think by the August time frame, we have a little bit more information we can share with you all about where we are with the external audit, as opposed to meeting with you all in July. And then obviously you'd have the November meeting, that's the joint meeting again, to hear the audit results. Those meetings would be, or typically at least, been on the third Thursday of the month at 3 p.m., except for that joint November meeting. And then, and this is really what Nate was asking about, so where do we go from here? So what I would say is that what we're looking at for that January meeting is an update on what is the status of our internal audit program, and specifically look back at that organizational risk assessment. I know several of y'all were on the committee when it was presented back in March, but a couple of y'all weren't. So we want to kind of revisit what the results of that risk assessment are or were. We may even invite the consultant or the contractor back who did it to kind of walk through it again, give y'all a chance to ask them some questions, and then start talking about how we're going to operationalize this. Where do we go from here in terms of next steps? What are the areas we're going to look at, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's kind of our planned for that January 2024 meeting. So with that, I guess I'll stop and see if you all have any questions or thoughts or concerns about anything I just covered. Yes, Andrew.
So as relates to the internal audit, you know, I'm really concerned that we're so far down the road from when Patricia left, and particularly when she said she had no longer been operating in an internal audit role, and it continues to just be moved down 3 months, 6 months at a chunk to when we're going to address it. You know, by January, we're going to be 3.5 years of not having anyone functioning in an internal audit role. And that is very concerning. You know, Wanda Green 10 years ago got caught, 3 times by her internal audit department prior to all of her issues coming to light. They do play a very valuable role. I know they're not fun. No one really loves dealing with auditors, but I think the city, and particularly the finance department, has a responsibility to ensure both in fact and in appearance that our money's being spent the way it ought to be spent. And that's really the role of the internal auditor. And I'm very concerned that we're hearing yet again there's no one in this role and it's being moved down to January. So is it going to be addressed then, or are we going to in January talk about addressing it several more months down the way?
Ms. Campbell.
Ms. Stanley, I certainly value your input in terms and concern, but what I want this committee to understand is that that role didn't hold us accountable. You know, the work that we do, the processes that we have in place holds us accountable. And I would also suggest to you that we have, finance has been trying to fill that position ever since, and we value having generally someone on staff to perform that function, but I just don't know if we're going to find it. We're definitely looking at the possibility of contracting that service out. It's not for us not trying, and we probably have not provided the more frequent updates that we needed to this committee with regards to our efforts. But Tony, I'll stop there. You have much more information about, you know, what you have been trying to do in terms of filling that role. But I just wanted to clarify the difference between the role and the function. We certainly are maintaining a high level of integrity, and I think our previous audits have demonstrated that. But Tony, you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And there's really not a whole lot I would add to that other than, yeah, we have and continue to be trying to fill the position. I think it's still an active recruitment on our HR website. We've interviewed a number of candidates. We interviewed one in the last 3 months that we really, really liked. He had a lot of great experience. We thought we had him, and he accepted another offer. So we're still actively trying to fill that position. We are also still talking with the consultants who completed the risk assessment for us and getting their advice on perhaps contracting out the entire program or a part of the program. And I can assure you by the time we come back to you all in January, we will have, we'll definitely be moving in a direction with the program, whether that's having the position filled, having it fully contracted out, and any updates that we can provide you all before then via memo or anything like that, like if we were to get someone hired, we will definitely do that as well. So, Debbie, do you have a question?
Can you share whether it was a salary issue that caused that person to not accept the offer?
You never fully know sometimes. I think that we did make multiple salary offers and went back and forth. I think, quite frankly, I think this candidate he had other offers on the table. I don't know whether it's from his current employer or someone else. And so he accepted another offer. Now, whether it was ultimately decided by the salary or not, I don't know, but we did make multiple salary offers to this person. Nate?
Yeah, so I guess thinking from a budget standpoint, so last year, I imagine you took a bunch of the budget that would have been allocated to this position and used it for purposes of the risk assessment in order to, because I think as you positioned it then, it was to kind of decide on where do the risks lie and how do we want to set up the program going forward. But were there audits that were done to basically, hit some of the critical areas as well during that time period?
So no, the last formal audit that was done and presented to this committee, and gosh, I don't know, Becky, if you remember, but it has been several years. It was actually contracted out, and it looked at our contracting processes, if I remember correctly. And again, Becky, I don't know if you remember any more specifics about it than I do, but the last, again, full-blown internal audit was completed by a contractor even before our previous incumbent left. So, but no work has been done yet in terms of audits related to the risk assessment that was completed.
Yes. Okay, so not even like targeted examinations. There was no internal audit work being done.
I'm not sure I would say there was no work being done. I think there was just nothing that rose to the level of a formal report. I mean, I think, so. Yes, Debbie.
I guess I'd like to publicly state that I agree with everything that Mr. Emery was saying. There's a specific place for internal audit. And Ms. Campbell, I totally understand, everybody views what you all are doing with the highest regard and accountability, but there is definitely a separate, distinct, and essential role that internal audit plays, not only by auditing, the finance department, but other departments and compliance, and kind of making sure that the city is prepared for an audit to reduce any potential control issues, et cetera, down the road. So again, I just want to, give my, thumbs up to Mr. Emery. I think he spoke about it very well, and I encourage the city, if we need to raise a salary, if we need to, whatever we need to do, I think it's very important. So thanks for letting me have my say.
And I just wanted to say, we totally agree with you. We totally agree with you of the importance of this role, but I don't want you all to think that because we don't have a person in that role, that we are not doing our best in terms of oversight of ourselves.
Thanks.
I think Andrew and then Sandra.
Yeah, I don't want my comment to come out that I'm accusing anyone in the city government of malfeasance. It's that appearance portion of maintaining the responsibility that is really kind of makes my teeth itch that we're this far down the way. I don't think, Tony, you're have some crazy scandal, or Deborah or anyone there, but looking at it objectively from a distance, it doesn't look great, and that's what I'm trying to put out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Sandra.
I'm just curious as to how the external auditor is addressing the situation. Did they mention this in their report? Because that's part of things that they should have observed and ask the city to do something about, one way or the other.
Yeah. Our external auditors have definitely asked about it. In fact, they provided some what I would call helpful advice to us over the last few weeks and months or so about potential routes we could go down with the program. And we actually had a meeting with them. I think it was earlier this week or early last week, where they asked me a series of questions about the organization and do I know of any fraud or anything like that. It's kind of a standard thing that they do. And one of the things they asked me was, what areas would I recommend essentially for improvement or something like that. And that was the one I mentioned, was that we've got to get our internal auditor position filled and get that program up and running again. Because, like Ms. Campbell said, we do hold ourselves to the highest standard, and we do have the external auditors coming in as well every year looking at us. But that doesn't replace having an effective internal audit program either. So we're committed to the program, and we're committed to moving it forward, whether it's with an in-house person or whether we end up contracting it out.
Okay. So they don't consider it an internal control weakness?
No, they do not.
Thank you.
All right, Nate.
So, well, I'll do one more question here, and then I realize we'll have a bigger update next time. I think one of the meetings I was listening back to mentioned the existence of an ethics hotline. I just was curious, for any submissions to the ethics hotline, who do those go to? Because in my life, those go to the audit committee in addition to a member of management.
Yes, that's a great question. So we still do have the ethics hotline. That's hard to say. It's still active. Prior to her departure, any reports that were received from that were sent to our internal auditor. Since she left, all of those reports have been coming to me, Ms. Campbell, and Rachel Wood, one of our assistant city managers. And so the three of us review anything that comes in, and provide a response back to whoever the person who submitted the complaint may have been. So, and we don't get a whole lot of usage of the system, I think, and it's a mix of internal employees using it, and also residents responding as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, is that something that we could start seeing, like, the final results of that? Because that's one of the things that, we don't have the internal auditor. It'd be great. They should be the ones, that are part of that process. But since they don't exist right now, that would help us gain a little bit of comfort about what's going on.
Yeah.
What concerns are being raised.
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me check into that. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's certain details we can't share, but there may be a high level kind of this is the type of item that was sent in that we can share with you all as we have these quarterly meetings. So yeah, I'll definitely check into that for you all.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Debbie.
So tagging on to that, if there was an issue that came through the ethics hotline that related, for example, to the finance committee, would it be possible for an audit committee member to be also a resource for somebody who calls in if they feel they need to go above management at the city?
So when you said finance committee, you meant finance department or?
Finance, yes, sorry. Finance department, any department. If they wanted to go to an advisory committee of the city as opposed to going to the city itself, is there an opportunity there for them?
Yeah, I think how I would respond to that is I would say I think that's one of the reasons when we set up the current structure that we had both myself and Deborah and Rachel Wood, someone from finance as well as folks from the city manager's office as well, who are seeing these as they come in. And what I would say, and Deborah, please jump in if I misspeak, but if there was something that came in that related to the finance department, I would immediately step back, let Deborah and Rachel handle it. And if that meant, they would handle it how they thought was appropriate. If that meant involving the city attorney's office or someone else to make a determination there, I think that's the route we would go down. So, Deborah.
And equally, so if it was concerning the city manager's office, both Rachel and I would step back and not respond.
All right. Well, thank you all for all the questions. It's been very helpful. And I don't want to cut the discussion off, but if there's no other questions, I guess we will move on. I think the next, oh yeah, Nate, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Tony, just on the meetings themselves, what about like the format of these meetings? Do we have to make any sort of decision on whether it's virtual, in person, or I think at orientation they mentioned something about a combination being available at some point.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I know the latest on it. I know that at one point this committee took a vote, and I can't remember if it was the last meeting. Andrew, you may remember when the vote was taken.
Yeah, I think it might have just been Scott and I when that occurred. As long as we set the dates with some strategic purpose, so I'm not trying to do them right at a tax deadline, I'm fine.
And
yeah, I took going back and listening to these videos, it looks like last year we had to make, or the decision was made during the September meeting, and I think that it had to be like an annual decision, and we had to make a decision by like November 1st of 22, which would apply to the next 12 months. That's what was mentioned during that meeting.
Yeah, I'll share what I remember because this was all committees. We were trying to ask for that information by November so we could set the next calendar year. So I would say that this calendar year is already virtual, and we'll need to decide again this November for next year. So we have this kind of audit calendar we've just described is still virtual. If there is some concern about that and we want to change it, we might be able to, but I think the whole point of us doing it ahead of the calendar year was so that we would just set it and not have to arbitrarily change it for some of the 45 or so committees we have. Is everybody hoping to go in person? Give me a little feel, like you're hoping to come in person, Nate?
Yeah, I can vote first. I mean, in my opinion, if I had the choice, I would go in person, but I wouldn't want to force anyone else to do that, which is why the mention of the combination approach as an option was appealing. So I guess I wouldn't necessarily suggest that we make any change until that was an option. I just wasn't sure how
I think it is.
The
hybrid option isn't necessarily that some could be in person and some remote, but we have had some committees do a special meeting in person. So if there were like one large subject that needed to happen and we felt better in person, we could have that as a special meeting.
Got it.
Yeah. That helps. That's how I remember it. If anybody else has input, staff, go ahead.
I don't have anything else. I guess, so would we need to decide today then for calendar year 24?
Not necessarily, because we still have so much to do in this year, October, November. We don't need to yet. Maybe we get a feel for it since we have so many new members and we continue on this virtual path and then regroup.
Okay. And we can always bring
everybody. I'm just trying to suggest something so we keep moving, but I think it is hard for us to stop midway and start a new strategy of meeting in person. I'm not sure where all of this, it looks like Deborah's in her office. Oh, Tony's in his office. So, it's just a little dependent on schedules. So I'd encourage us probably to stick with this until we get a couple and maybe we can see if it's working. Sound good? Debbie, Sandra, any other thoughts?
I'm good either way. Honestly, sometimes it's nice being in the same room, but I think the format you have here with raising your hand and all that stuff, it seems to work well.
Yeah, I like the idea of virtual as well. It's convenient, especially when you have 3 o'clock during working hours. People are still in offices, so it gets more done, and you don't have the commuting and everything else in between. So,
isn't that funny how that worked out? It seemed like once things started going back to in person, I could have like one less meeting a day. Because your people are suddenly late again because they're arriving and they're parking. And it's been a little wonky. I have grown accustomed to having that fluidity of ending a meeting at 5 till the hour and starting a new one at the hour. But I'm willing to be flexible if this committee, desires to go back in person.
Yeah, I'm fine with virtual. Yep.
All right. Well, I'll move us on then to the next part of the agenda, and I think it's public comment. And Alicia, I think we don't have any public comment. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Well, that's the last part of our meeting today. So I guess unless there are any objections, I will adjourn the meeting now. I appreciate everyone's time today and feedback.
Okay, thank you. Hey, someone will get with Nate about scripts and stuff for his next. Okay, great.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, sure. All right. Thanks, everyone. Nice to
Thank you.
meet you.
Thanks, Nate.
Have a good day.